First of all, I would want to thank you, all of you, the panelists and the participants who are available for the call today. Basically, this is an event which is a week-long event that is happening in the event of the World Youth Skills Day, which was on 15th of July. And as we were discussing that in the event of that particular occasion, what we have come up with this particular week-long dialogue that we are trying to do on the entire skill ecosystem and trying to understand the minor points and have much more benefits that can go to the youth. So this event is actually organized by CII MP panel along with Aisect and NSM. And this is an event which will have the 8 long days of multiple rounds of discussions on multiple factors within the skill ecosystem. So just to set a context, I'm sure people would be aware of, but just to reiterate myself, it was way back in 2014 when the United Nations General Assembly had declared 15th of July as a World Youth Skills Day. And it is since then that we have been trying to take this particular occasion in terms of discussing with multiple stakeholders. That can be a technical vocational education providers, that can be the policy makers, that can be the students, in terms of understanding and taking this particular youth skill forward and have a lot of deliberations to be done based on the inputs that we get out of this. So on this occasion today, we have an elite panelist that we have available today. So to start off with, we have Mrs. Ritu Rani, who is one of the panelists with us. Mrs. Ritu Rana currently is the CHRO for Quick Heal Technologies, and she comes with a vast experience in multiple HR leadership roles in companies like Amdocs and HDFC. She also is a keen, very CXO level coach and has a keen interest towards the research also. So now, having said that, the few of her achievements is that she has been invited by Unicorn Conference by Harvard Business School, which was held in Mumbai in 2016. And that is where that she shared her insights about the contextual realities of emerging markets on building the future leaderships. So this has been one of the keen and one of the biggest achievements what is there. Apart from that, she has been working on, and her work has been published by Society for Human Resource Management on engaging the Indian millennials. So I welcome Ritu ma'am on board for the discussion today.
Thank you, and it's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you, ma'am. The second panelist we have is Dr. Mukund Raj. Dr. Mukund Raj holds an MBA and a DBA degree from Rushmore University. He has also pursued his postgraduate diploma in cyber law and cyber forensics from National Law School of India. Prior to the current position, what he holds today as a project head, SDGCC Karnataka as a UNDP resource, he has been working into business development and has held multiple senior leadership roles as vice president in MindLogics, vice president in Go Realities, and has also been a keen individual contributor under Government of Karnataka in the skills department, as he was prior to the current role, he was working as an IT consultant for Government of Karnataka in the skill department. So I welcome you, Mukund sir, on the panel today.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
The third panelist that we have today is Mr. Sanjeev Jha, who is the founder and CEO of Broad Arc Technologies Private Limited. Mr. Jha comes with a very rich experience of almost 25 years, and he is a BTech in chemical engineering from BIT and a postgraduate diploma in business management from IRMA. He is also a very passionate social entrepreneur who believes in quality skilling and vocational education using the technologies. Mr. Jha aims at creating community of key opinion leaders, civil society organizations and policymakers who would collectively work to advocate the increased employment for the youth across India. So that's a very keen and that's a very great aspiration what he comes up with. So I welcome you on board, Mr. Jha. I think, Mr. Jha, you are on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Thank you, Rajat. Thanks for having me here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. And the fourth panelist that we have today on board is Mr. Rakshit Manda, who is a sales director with Certify. Mr. Rakshit has a rich experience of 14 plus years, and he has been working with companies like Hindsight and Costprice.com. He comes with a very rich experience in terms of the digitalization and using the digital technologies in terms of the marketing. So in today's conversation, I would say that he would play a very vital role in terms of bringing up the digital aspect of that can be used in the entire aspiration of the youth skills, what we are talking about today. So I welcome on board Mr. Rakshit.
Thanks, Rajat. Look forward to the intriguing conversation and topics that we have on today.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. And I really thank you once again for the time and the effort that we are trying to put in today for today's session. So just to set up the context, what we have today, the World Youth Skills Day is celebrated every year. And the theme for this year's World Youth Skills Day is the reimagining of the youth skills post-pandemic, because we all are aware that post-pandemic, there have been a lot of challenges and there are a lot of things that actually has been put on hold and put on still due to this pandemic effects that have been created. So today's discussion primarily will be revolving around how do we imagine the youth skills post-pandemic and what are the efforts that can be put in, and the experiences that the entire panel brings on board today is going to be real critical for us. So if you allow, can we just go ahead and start the conversation now?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, sure.
Okay. So the first thing that I would want to bring up and what I would want to reach out to Mrs. Raina is that how do you see the impact of COVID-19 on the skill initiatives and its stakeholders? And how is the accelerating technology interventions in the government-sponsored and the private model has impacted the youth skills today?
I would say, in my language, I say that COVID was a lab for us. Unfortunately, not in a good sense, but it has really fast forwarded many, many things. And I just want to give a case in point here, and case in point is about the industry from which I am coming, especially the cybersecurity industry. Now, if I look at what has happened in the COVID is that it has really pushed digitalization to the, I would say, to the large extent. Now, digitalization doesn't come alone. It comes with many set of things around it, right? Which actually means we are moving from physical world to a virtual world. Now, when you move from a physical world to a virtual world, one of the biggest challenges you have is how do you ensure security when you don't have the firewalls of the offices or whatever you call it, and you have to still do the business. And I would say even the most sensitive type of a business. So that is where we were as an industry. And even before COVID, one of the biggest challenges in the industry we were facing was the shortage of the skilled resources for us. And, if I go by the data, it says in US alone, which is a developed economy, there is a shortage of 4.5 million cybersecurity professionals. Imagine the kind of shortage we can have in a country like India, where there are not even, I would say, government certified courses in this domain. Now, because of that, so this gap kept increasing. What COVID did is it did an upsurge of business for us. It started pushing us into new domains of threat research, also into network security. At the same time, ability of us to deliver as a business was becoming challenging because we didn't have the people who would actually deliver this with a full scale of skills. Now, when we talk about the government backup, on the courses and other things, I think what is missing gap, which I see as a human resource leader, is that when we hire people from colleges, we hire best-in-class engineers. But these best-in-class engineers come with very good technical knowledge and also a knowledge about programming language and XYZ. But when they enter us as into our workforce, they have to do a combination of two things. One is the technical knowledge, which college is giving them great. But another is the functional knowledge about the cybersecurity as an industry. So that is the place where the gap is. Now, let me give a very simple example. Why do we need very specialist people? When we hire a Java professional or when we hire a full stack engineer or a C++, when they have to work on our own products, they should know, of course, one is the coding and language part of it. They should have functional understanding of cybersecurity knowledge so that they are able to apply that concept and make the application different in creation of the products. That comes only with the functional knowledge. that continues to stay as a gap. And then what do we do as an organization? We train people. We train people, and then they become, I would say, hot things in the market in 2 years, and others start picking them up. And that's a gap which we are facing every now and then. Now, what is the solution? The solution is a partnership between academia and industry, where people are trained for industry ready jobs. Because I think there are two types of knowledges. One is the basic understanding, which academia is doing a brilliant job about. Second is, how is this job application required for a particular sector or industry? That is the place where the gap is. I think if that gap somehow can be kind of, I would say, reduced, or a partnership created, it would help both ways, because academia gets their people placed, they have careers, and we get the ready people for us to move on.
Yeah, I truly get the point where you're trying to make. So just carrying the discussion forward, let's hear Mukund sir on the same context. What would be your opinion about the skill initiatives and its skill stakeholders, what we are facing today post the pandemic that we are going through?
Good, Mr. Rajat, and I am blessed and cursed at the same time. I am blessed because I have the knowledge from the government sector, but the curse is, unfortunately, we are unable to move forward, though we know the problems and the solutions. Alluding to Ms. Raina, I completely agree, because this is something that ails the industry, is that they don't have the functional knowledge. But what I see ailing is, unfortunately, the Sector Skill Council, which the skill sector actually talks about and we pride about, there is no convergence between the actual industry, various facets of the industry, and the academia and the government. We are not able to see eye to eye. A classic example is the future skills of NASSCOM that we have been trying to promote in the government. Now, the academia is not actually taking it up. Actually, it's I wish the academia takes this more seriously, because the government pays for this. It is not free. The other thing is standardization. Unfortunately, though we have the SSC, none of the industries see eye to eye on what exactly is the content and curriculum, though that was the main role of the Sector Skill Council, is to see that they don't go through the board of studies, into the entire vicious cycle of the board of studies in the colleges, but actually take up the Sector Skill Council, where they can scale up as per the industry requirement. So we have the academia here, we have the students and industry. My request and suggestion is, yes, of course, there's a huge paucity, there's a digital divide, as was very visible during the COVID vaccination registrations itself. There's a huge digital divide. Now, I would request the academia to, digital literacy is a part of their curriculum from AICTE for their own credits. I would request AICTE to take this up seriously, so that we can have some basic literacy skills for the people. On the other side, the industry to seriously consider future skills. I mean, the academia to consider future skills. All BTU colleges in Karnataka, and similarly engineering colleges across the country, can have some basic course which is being offered free of cost by NASSCOM, where all the industry have put in their time and effort, so that when they get into the industry, they have some basic functional knowledge, a basic, so that the industry doesn't start from the scratch and train them again. So these are some things which we have to work in convergence. I think we are more, I think today, if you look at the hackers, cybersecurity, since we are speaking about cybersecurity, I think China and Russia are too good in both protective as well as defensive. Whereas India, we talk about IT, but we are not yet in that sphere. We are not into hardcore technology in a massive way. Maybe we have some its and bits here and there, when some brilliance, but not as a academia, not as a society where it could be there. So this is my take, that academia come and take this course, NASSCOMs or any future skill course seriously, to help the industry and help their own students.
A very valid point, sir. A very valid point. So the takeaway from the first point, I'll just add one more bit to it, wherein we say that understanding wherein the academia is not owning certain things, there are things which are happening in silos, which are not happening together from the government side and from the consumer side as well. Now, how do we prepare our school students for an IR 4.0, which is already in place? with the soft and the hard infra capacity, when we know that more than 30% of the people do not even have an access to the 4G network today. So now, considering this particular challenge from the people's side, I would request Mr. Rakshit to just come up with his views, just to understand that now facing that particular digital challenge, what we have, but the world moving towards the digitalization and the students being promoted on the digital platforms, how do you think that this is something that can be taken up?
Sure. No, I think it's interesting. So, the question that you asked before in terms of the impact, it's very important because, I am, again, I'm not considering myself youth, like I'm not in my, early 20s or mid 20s, but I think some of the target audience or the people who have tuned in today, it's very important to give them the direction towards where the future is heading from a jobs perspective and their career. So what we have identified, and this is across the board, keeping in terms of this, all the stakeholders, whether that's the industry, the training institutes, the sector skill councils, the government, we have actually identified 4 major pain points. And of course, the impact that has happened is, one is, of course, the disruption from our training, the course provider themselves. So centers being shut is one major problem. Again, the delivery of some of these courses, I'm not sure, when the pandemic happened, we were quite ready for that. So I think identifying some of these pain points, and also some of the teachers, for example, so some of the initiatives that we have taken to prepare our youth for the right workforce or right jobs, it's very imperative that we have the right mentors and teachers and guidance as well. Now, coming to your point, Rajat, in terms of the Industry Revolution 4.0, in essence, what is that? It is a collaboration. So man and machine alignment is what we are talking about, right? So I was very recently speaking with one of very senior person heading training at Bosch India. And one of the things they said is, we don't know in which direction things are going. Having said that, we have identified one thing, that digitization needs to take place. So some of the key points that we have done, and you said about 4G and smartphone penetration, I actually, as an Indian, feel quite proud that we have crossed about 500 million smartphones. So the smartphone penetration in India is happening. Digital learning, digital literacy is happening as well. So while 4G might not be existent every nook and corner of the country, but we have basic network connectivity. So when it comes to learning, upskilling and reskilling ourselves to be job ready. So some of the things that Industry 4.0 needs, we are talking about getting the right digital role. The government, for example, with the private sector, we need to invest in the right education and the right training. You identify some of these jobs. So whether it is blockchain, whether it is AI, whether it is data science. I was reading a very interesting article, Rajat, on McKinsey, that said 65% of people who are doing their primary education by 2030, the jobs, they don't even exist currently. So just preparing and looking at some of the data, not just within ourselves in India, but looking at countries like Germany, for example, or Singapore, who have sort of started going in the same direction. So understanding the job readiness, the future, the skills which are required, and acquiring those skills and competencies is the key. And I would also encourage everyone, all the youth, there are some excellent programs being provided. So, Ms. Sena touched base in terms of IT and cybersecurity. Absolutely. Some of those things needs to be incorporated in our learning as well. But please, we should also start talking about our skills and competencies. It is not just the course that we have done. Is the industry ready to hire people based on the job requirements, the job shortages, the skills and competencies which are required? The answer is yes. So we definitely have a big light at the end of the tunnel. So while the impact has been big, I think, we can all come out much stronger.
So just to bounce off the discussion, what's happening, would it be wrong to say, and in fact, while I talk, I would request Mr. Sanjeev to bring up his views. Would it be wrong to say wherein once we know the current system, what's happening and the current prevailing situations that are there, would it be wrong to say that the academia part or the policy guidelines part or the framework part is something which the government and the academia can assess, and it should be a bigger role from an industry that is coming in terms of leading this particular thing forward post the pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just let me go a step a little back and reflect on what Rakshit was saying. I mean, the issue, I mean, what I feel is, from an IR 4.0 perspective, what exactly is it is? It is what we are talking about, automation and digitization of the manufacturing and industrial processes. So, which was actually in effect even before the pandemic actually set in. So, this is something which is inevitable. So, if I have to get my workforce ready for this IR 4.0 as we speak, it is very critical that the proficiency, or let's say forget proficiency, even familiarity with technologies like AI, ML, and that ma'am was saying about cyber security, web design and things like that needs to come into place as of yesterday. So otherwise, we are actually losing time, and this is a irreversible process. So I feel, one, the courses that we are actually having, I mean, coming back to that question which Dr. Raj had also raised, see the courses that we have, we are talking about it in NEP 2020, I mean, incidentally. So that needs to kick in fast. So these courses need to be, immediately put it in the curriculum, and we need to start acting on it. So that's one thing which I would like to see, happening very fast. Secondly, in terms of the access, so a very pertinent point. I am from telecom. I mean, I had spent about more than a decade in telecom. So I appreciate the fact that, you were saying 30% of the people do not have access to 4G. So there you go, no streaming, nothing happening for them. What do you do? So my recommendation here is that let's go fast on a blended mode of learning, which is about 60% of it, I would say, could be through online. 40% is the face-to-face curriculum, and this face-to-face is required to offset that asymmetry, which is the cause due to the income and the lack of access. So I think that is what needs to kick in very, very quickly. And lastly, before I kind of cross your 3-minute deadline, see, the one important thing is that the sector skill council point that Dr. Raj made in the beginning, I think that's a very critical point, and we have been actually talking about it for almost about now 6-7 years. Okay, see, so the whole idea is we need to have content in the skills domain which is required by the industry. We are not trying to get academicians in place. So that is something which we all of us realize now. So the time has come where, when you are actually developing content, actually developing the curriculum, the industry needs to lead the thing, not the academicians which are actually leading the way. So that's one thing. So that's my views on this. So does it answer your question, Rajat?
Yeah, very much it does, sir. Very much it does. Just to extend the discussion forward, I would want to reach out to Mukund sir once again. Sir, how do you feel the augmented and the virtual reality is currently impacting the social well-being of the learners on a large scale? And what do you find? How do you find the balance there?
Well, Mr. Rajat, to answer, I'll step back into something that we may find, I'll circle back to the question. The previous World Skill Competition, which was in Kazan, actually the gold medalist won a prize using VR. The entire problem statement was through a VR.
True.
Now, I always have felt augmented reality and virtual reality will do very good in upskilling the current people, especially where consumables are involved in the very basics. For example, if you look at welding, electrical, so forth, there's a huge dispensation towards consumable items. We could use AR and VR to actually train skilled people initially. Unfortunately, the industry has not taken it seriously. This we have been advocating, and if somebody from the industry can come forward with one small 20-minute bit of a module, I think we can have this going along, because we have, I wouldn't say virtual reality, but we have virtual problem statements in the cyber world where people are having hands-on experience in sorting out the problem. That's there. But in the hardcore traditional occasional skills, which are lacking in India, I think anyway, manufacturing is very low in India and Karnataka is very low. I think Sustainable Development Index score, Karnataka's score is very low in manufacturing.
True.
Similarly, while we talk about Innovation India Index, the highest score in the country is 42. Again, Karnataka is the highest. So if a 42 out of 100 is the highest, I'm sorry, we should be ashamed of rather than being very proud of that. We should be one. So I think augmented AR and VR is the way forward. And I think the skill ecosystem should really adapt it, and the industry should lead a way. Because at the end of the day, the government is a driver. Government only drives when there's a proof of concept. Unfortunately, that's the reality. Everybody says, they need a proof. It is like the Three Idiots movie. Sabko demo chahiye. Everybody wants a demo. So if the industry can take a risk of and prepare a 20-minute or 30-minute module, come back to any state government or central government with a demo, and they can demonstrate, I think that's the way forward, and it can solve a lot of things. Having said that, it will not remove the human element out of it. Say a relation-based society, Asia, we are not a transactional-based society like the West. A bit of human element is required to solve problems, because AI again requires humanity to solve. So this is my take on it. Thank you.
That was actually a very crude reality while we were talking about the virtual reality concept. So I'll just move on to Mr. Rakshit once more and just try to have his views on the same, sir.
Yes, it's a very interesting one. I mean, sometimes, when you read or look at certain documentaries, right? So it can be seen as a threat, because too much of virtual reality, augmented reality, but to me, it's a big opportunity as well, especially when it comes to, and I think Dr. Mukund made a very valid point in terms of the blended learning. So 60% blend, whether it is, for example, doing a physical course and doing something online. I think the virtual element of doing that, AR and VR now is being used from an assessment perspective as well. And even things when you're talking about welding or, a machine operator, for example. So we work very closely with TUV, Rylan, Festo. So while I've had the theory and I don't have the means, especially in this day and age, to go and physically act on a particular machine, doing that through augmented reality, virtual reality gives me, in essence, almost a hands-on experience. So when somebody is saying, do you have the skills and competencies to do a particular job, especially from a manufacturing aspect, you can actually judge and assess somebody's competency by having the AR and VR. So I think it is great. And they can also be used to provide the user with an amazing and detailed experience of a particular machine. While, we used to look at a diagram, as Dr. Mukund said, everyone wants a demo. So to actually be in that environment or create that realistic environment where they can touch, feel, experience the particular thing through AR and VR is absolutely essential.
Just to take your word forward, sir, and in line with what Dr. Raj was mentioning, do you really feel that this is a time wherein, just in line with the previous discussion, what we were having, that this is a time where this is a time when the industry has to lead? Because these are the things that is more expected from the industry side to come in and then being adopted by the government and take it forward, rather than the government conceptualizing it and the industry taking it forward. Do you feel that's true?
Absolutely, it is. And to be honest, Rajat, industry is suffering as well. The reason is, while industry let the private training providers provide a course, when the industry goes out and looks, again, giving an example of Bosch having 30,000 engineers, the problem some of these companies are facing is, while they recruit only to find out that on paper they have done a particular course, but the hands-on experience, the actual skills and competencies are missing. So the industry has to, and I'm glad that industry is actually moving in the right direction. The public-private partnership model, which worked really well in Germany, is also being experienced in India. Some of the big organizations are coming and joining hands. In fact, even IIT, for example, in their research and tech park, have joined hands with manufacturing units and say, okay, we will support you to give you the right sort of candidates. You tell us what is the need of the hour. What are the skills? So some of the industries are also funding those research. And I think that is the step in the right direction. So industry has to come forward. Otherwise, there'll be a disconnect of all these people having on paper the skills and education, but not the right sort of skills and competencies that the industry demands. So for the industry to absorb them, they both have to come together and work in a partnership model.
Absolutely. While we talk about virtual realities and artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, they're all a part of the future skills and the future skill logics, what we are talking about. So Rana ma'am, I would want to reach out to you to understand that how are the future skills defined for the blue collars and the manufacturing unit, for the manufacturing staff?
So I think what is important is that, before I really go into the future skills, I just want to make a small comment on the previous discussion,
Please.
and then I will surely answer this as well. I was hearing Dr. Mukund saying about the innovation, and I was seeing Rakshit talking about how industry is trying to take a lead. I think we have to really step back and think, why are we in the state which we are in? And if you really look deeper into it, why we are in the state what we are in is, as a country, as a nation, our approach has been reactive, never proactive or evocative. So when your approach becomes reactive, everything is here and now. Everything has to be closed. And when you have everything is here now, everyone is rushing. Why is industry rushing? Why is industry ready to put the money in the research? Because they have shortage of manpower. Even training institute is not giving them. They have no choice. Why is government suddenly saying that I will fund? Because government has realized India as a nation has grown very well in the services sector. But with such a largest talent pool in the world, why don't we have such a low index on innovation? We did great as a nation from 1980 to 2000, growing the service industry. But if our focus would have moved from efficiency to value, we would have created great innovations. Indians go and they innovate outside. So I think the whole thing has to start that, yes, if I have to create a long-term value as an industry, as an academia, or as a nation, I have to let something burn today. Everything will not give me ROI tomorrow. And it is true for every fact. Now, coming back to the future skills part, the question which you asked me, in the World Economic Forum, when they were talking about the fear people have that jobs would be lost and everything will go to automation and virtual reality, the things which will still continue is about care, is about counseling, right? And jobs will not evaporate. They will just take different form. That's what is happening today. For example, when we talk about the IT industry or the product industries, do we have enough manpower and are we reducing? Answer is no, we have shortage. But at the same time, are people available? No, they are not. Why? Because over a period of time, the nature of jobs has changed, which requires quick skilling. So quick skilling is not happening. So everyone is running around. So what is important from a skills point of view is we should have learnability. We should have adaptability. And we should have resilience. And I will connect all these three skills to this pandemic. Just think about 21st of March, 2020. What happened to the whole country? I am saying everyone, especially the managers, I need people in front of my eyes. Are they really working? What are they doing at home? Suddenly the country shuts down. Everyone is operating from home. Some industries, the productivity increased. So who became successful in this process? People who didn't ponder, who adapted, who learned faster, reinvented their business models, and who were resilient for the setbacks. Now, the only challenge which I see today is that, you have two parts. One is the logical world. Another is, I would say, the emotional or the behavioral world. Now, unfortunately, we feel if we win the logical world, emotional to ho jayega. But it doesn't happen that way. If I don't have a ability to learn, whatever courses you will make me do, I will just collect certifications and go and apply for jobs because I just want a job. I need to know that, okay, I need to learn threat research. I will go to YouTube. I will search on the courses. I will do X, Y. I will find out a job for myself. So learnability is important. Hard skill will happen. Adaptability is important. You will land up in a job and there will be partnership between academia and industry. And eventually, if you have resilience, because the biggest challenge in the coming times is the unknown, which all of us are dealing with. And if we have to successful to deal with unknown, we have to be resilient. 3 things will fail, 4th will succeed. Let's hang on. So I think that is how the future skills have to be assessed on these 3 parameters, and then dealing with the ambiguity, making fast decisions, adapting, learning, and moving on rather than pondering about things.
Absolutely. I totally buy that point from an HR background also, ma'am. What I would say that functional part has always been a critical part, wherein if I have a resource which is trainable and coming with a 60-70% technical ability, I can still get him to 100. But
Correct.
somebody coming on a 90% technical ability, having zero or a minimal functionality part, is technically going to be not a great resource for an organization. I totally buy your point, ma'am. Just in the same line, I would want to move on to Mr. Sanjeev and just try to understand in the same lines of the future skills, future skills in the blue collar and the manufacturing unit, wherein we know it is just after Japan, wherein India is the second largest country which has the biggest skill gap situation today. Japan being one on 84% and India being second on 62%. How do you feel the punch of this future skills coming in and helping us to subside this particular gap? So you're on mute, sir. Thank you.
I'm so sorry. I think it will become generic. You are on mute, that kind of. No, so just a step back. See, I think very nicely articulated there in terms of the soft skills, and the emotional, the EQ that you require for an employee, the resilience and the learnability and the adaptability. Fine. Now, from a functional point of view, what are the skills that we are looking at? This is the question that you've actually put forward. So, especially in terms of the blue collar workers. So, what are we saying? I mean, if you reflect on a discussion, we started off with saying that there is automation and digitization in the industry, which is irreversible. It is inevitable. It is going to happen. So if this is the situation that we are in, so what are the skills and the roles that are in demand? So roles will demand high skills and technology enabled expertise, right? That is one key thing. So which will be easy for people to understand product performance and to improve its efficiency. So that's one thing which will be in demand, and that is something which we need to work on. Okay. Secondly, the exposure to technology, digital literacy, and electronic agency will be, intelligence will be very high. That exposure requirement will be very high in demand. Even because see, even construction sites nowadays have digital hubs. Things have changed a lot. So obviously, if you say blue collar, means it is not those traditional blue collars 30 years back. Blue collar means you lift this and take this from here to here. You cover a distance, and that's the value addition. That's not. So I mean, that's the difference that we are talking about. You have the other one big area where a lot of changes are happening is robotics and data literacy. So robotics are nowadays being used even in your basic functions like measurements, like casting, like packaging, packing centers. All of them are now using robotics to a large extent. So if you need to function in this area, you need to understand the algorithm. You will need to understand some amount of understanding of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So the blue collar worker is not the blue collar worker what we have in mind, quote unquote. It is somebody who it is a very general term to say that he has to be tech enabled. I mean, I'm just trying to define what does it mean for the blue collar worker to be tech enabled. So the other last part is that the smart machines. So somebody said you have a machine to machine connection. You use Internet of Things to connect these machines. So what these machines do, they generate an enormous amount of data, and obviously they make life simpler for us and faster and efficient and so on and so forth. But the point is that we are in a situation where 25 to 30% of the machines on the shop floor managed by these blue collar workers will be smart machines. So if that is the situation, what do we need to know? You need to know the machine learning with some specific training in artificial intelligence. That's the key point that we are missing. And artificial intelligence will be increasingly used. I just would like to bring this point here now. Dr. Raj just touched upon it, saying that, so all actions where, they are repetitive in nature, where, you can do it by a certain amount of learning again and again, where the emotions are not required, are likely the ones to get automated fast. And that is where you require artificial intelligence. And that's going to come in big doses. So my take is that in terms of the skill sets for these blue collar workers, technology, and more specifically, if you say, artificial intelligence and machine learning is the thing which we should focus upon.
So if I have to relate what Raina ma'am just mentioned and what you mentioned, is that it's a need of an R&D where we need the future skills to incorporate in the blue collar or on the manufacturing part. But that is possible only when the adaptability or the trainability of the resources existing working can at least be trained, and that basic part can be taken care of. That is where we see the future of it. So would it be wrong to say that, sir?
No, you're absolutely right.
I would now want to move on to Mukund sir once again and just hear his views before we move on to the second topic.
I just want to add one more thing, which, especially AR, VR, virtual learning, all these forms leads to a very inclusive society. For example, there are a lot of PWDs. We have more than about 2 or 3 lakh persons with disabilities in a particular age group in Karnataka alone that we are aware of. These people who may not be fit for a manufacturing sector or a job, with the advent of AR or VR, can make themselves valuable because they may possess the skill set. Through this, they can actually be very inclusive. So this is something I just wanted to add across.
Absolutely. Great thought there, sir. So what I would want to understand from you again is that why is it important for the millennials to integrate the social impact with technology, sir? What's your view on that?
I think a lot of technology, or I would say innovation, startup, etc. Very little of it is at the cornerstone of all the startups are actually IPOs, if I may. The most of which I have interacted with, or we have the startup Karnataka, K Innovate, everything. So everybody thinks you can become a millionaire or a billionaire or have an IPO by having a startup. The social impact is very minimal, because these are all college bred. Now people just come out of college, or while in the teens, they just get into an IPO mode. I think we need to have a bit of a relation-based sociological aspect as well, because we have more than about 1 million apps now, and they all compete with each other. Very few of them make any relevance to the society. So if anything that is going to be successful should have the person-centric, citizen-centric, and some value add to it. Now, if you have a value, we already have the sustainable development goals across all the 17. It's a 360 degree. Anything that can give a positive impact to the current generation and the future generation, even a bit of it, I think it is very much required with technological innovation anywhere. Because I think the more we generate, I think we feel that we are having a positive impact, but the negative impact is too huge. If you look at LEDs, the cost and propensity of the trade-off is too high on the environmental impact, while it may have a very minimal positive impact. So similarly, there are a lot of other innovations. I think we need to actually have this in so that it can sustain. Otherwise, it may be a short-term success, but a long-term failure for the self as well as the society. Thank you.
Very fairly put, sir. So in the same line, I would want to reach out to Raina ma'am again, because you've been doing a fairly high amount of jobs and write-ups on the millennial parts. So ma'am, what's your view on this?
I will just give you a background. When I wrote my article and white paper, which was published by SHRM on millennials, and it is connected with what Dr. Mukund also said, is that we were trying to create an engagement model for millennials in India. Unfortunately, there was no research available on Indian millennials. Whatever research we found, the data was taken from the West. I think when I did my deeper work into that to understand how does Indian millennials, which is the youngest, I would say, nation on the earth, is different from the others. The biggest thing which came in up is that there are many influences which you have on millennials, which influence anyone's characteristics, which is culture, which is economy, which is society, and other factors. Now in India, if you look at NCER report, the maximum population, they every year they publish a report on household incomes, and basis that they actually tell you how many people fall in mid income, high, and upper income. The population which of India you can compare to the West in terms of that household income, it's just 3%. There's a huge population which is actually in the lesser than that 3%, which is mid. Now, think about in India, what happens, people who join engineering, they are coming from these household incomes, which would be not even the middle class of the West. They are farmers' kids who are coming to job for first time in Bangalore, in Pune, and all that. Now, what Dr. Mukund was saying that how are they connected to the societal impact? For them, they have come out to prove themselves. So the fastest thing they can do is they start a startup. It's a big money and it helps them. If as an industry or as I would say academia or as a society, I would say, we are able to create that sensitization that there is a long term and there is a short term. And if we will think about long term in parallel to what we want to achieve as high achievers, because this is the population which is going to be heading these companies and all that in future, it will start making a difference. Unfortunately, today that is not happening. There is a splurge of people in 5 or 6 big economic pockets, which is happening. And then there's a peer competition, right? I had used a parlance in my paper where I said that 6 boys sitting in the same room, working in a different companies, in the evening, they don't have the mentorship of back their homes, right? So they just talk about themselves, about the compensation they are making, what great things. So that peer influence is huge. So what is missing is the guidance and mentoring platforms to create this awareness. They are young, they are very dynamic, they can really create an impact, but they lack that. They come from a seat of ignorance to these big cities, then they are in a mad rush here.
So in the same line, ma'am, as you rightly mentioned, do you think there is a need of any framework deliberation or a guidance factor to start coming in from an authority level that's going to help?
Absolutely. There has to be a framework and there has to be a guidance, because if you will not provide that, because if you look what does framework or guidance does? Framework or guidance.
ಸರಿ ನೋಡೋಣ ಆಮೇಲೆ ನೋಡೋಣ. ಇವತ್ತು ಇದರಿಂದ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ? ಇದು ಬಟ್ಟೆ ವಾಶ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ?
I think there is someone on the
green color.
Yeah, thank you. So these frameworks and platforms, they actually create guidance for being much more proactive and helping the society at large. I'm sure they will create wonders if there is a framework or guidance like that. But in absence of that, everything is left to the industries, and they are also looking many times for their gains, right? And in the process, this societal integration as a platform is not happening.
Just one quick thing I would want to hear from Mukund sir before I move on to Rakshit sir for the next set of questions. So now, as ma'am just mentioned, where do you see the interference or the intervention from the government side for this kind of a framework or guidance factor to start coming in?
Sorry, what addressed to me? I lost.
Okay. In the same line of what Raina ma'am just mentioned, where do you see the intervention from the government coming in from a framework side or from a guidance side that has to be created from an authority levels?
Yes, the government is very proactive, as I have seen whether various governments are proactive, but the thought has to come in from experts. So the private sector is seen as an expert, because at the end of the day, the final product, that's the human resource. Actually, the majority of it in the technology sphere caters to the private sector, albeit to the government. But so the government actually is very warm in helping in framing helping complement the framework required by the private sector. The thought process, the implementation has to come in from the government, because the why, what, when, if anybody can give the framework, then the government is very supportive. I mean, we have tried, a couple of success stories are there, but at the end of the day, it should be an engagement, and the private sector should always understand, government works is God's work, so there's no time frame to it. Sometimes if we are not very clear in our proposals, then it gets hankered. So a very pretty clear proposal to the government can expedite and give very immediate results. We have the NSS with us, the youth department working across all the colleges, the higher education. Similarly, with the new education policy coming in Karnataka, we have about 228 Karnataka public schools, which are supposed to be the model schools where this is being adopted. Government is now experimenting or piloting through CSR implementation of vocational and future skills in some schools, in some of the 228 schools. So we welcome the private players as long as there is no conflict and there's a synergy. so that multiple brands may offer the same learning. We need to complement, welcome, and we can move forward. In fact, we are open to incubation centers from the private as well, in school or the campuses, the government campuses. They can leverage the power of the NSS, the youth department, the skill department, go forward.
Absolutely. Point taken, sir. Before we open the house for questions, I would just want to reach out to Rakshit sir once more. How do you think that the technology can help in leverage the connect between the industry and the academia and make them work closer? And what are the impacts that you see from this particular collision that happens between a technology and the industry and the academia?
Sure. So I think before I answer that, I think we all need to realize that the partnership between the industry and the academia needs to happen in the first place. How that happens, in what shape, form, through which method, so technology, or whether it is, for example, a table discussion, that's secondary. If you look, I was reading a very interesting quote from one of the big manufacturing especially in the automotive domain. They were talking about partnership between industry and academia will be instrumental in advancing the research which is required to plan what sort of job roles, what sort of skill set which is required. So for us to create that skilled workforce, that partnership is important. Now, whether it comes from a strong academic and industry partnership, which can be built with a focus on innovation. Now, innovation can happen multifold, right? So that could be a flow of ideas as well. Like how we are having a discussion today virtually, there could be virtual sessions as well. So understanding the skill shortage from the industry, incorporating that as part of the course material itself. So the course curriculum, which is being taught by institutes, universities, engineering, mechanical, anything, all that needs to be incorporated. How technology can actually advance that is one thing is very basic, which is your online sessions. So your online sessions, your webinars, you could, for example, have industry experts as well. And the industry has opened that up. So I see a lot of webinars being conducted, of course, by CII as well, where they call industry experts to actually talk. So today we have more than 200 people tuned into this webinar. So imagine the industry experts talking about and delivering to the youth what are the actual skills which are required to do what kind of job, not just based in India. One of the things that we are very keen and we are proud to say we have actually achieved just before the COVID-19, one thing is the international mobility. So you look at the youth here, yes, absolutely, we want to work in India. You see companies coming to India as well. Apple has a big manufacturing unit here, and I think Dr. Mukund would know that as well in Karnataka. Recently, even Tesla has opened or done a partnership in the sense they have registered their company. So they have to work with the academia, with the institutes to provide that industry-ready workforce. Technology, I think the industry is more than ready to even fund projects and have their own campuses, own machines as part of the course material itself. So finishing school, while all the theory is done, the industry would then collaborate, get the right work, the students, especially in the final year, and train them to be industry ready. So delivery can happen, or at least the basic information can start through webinars and mentoring and counseling sessions, and actual delivery can happen in terms of workshop, or we spoke about the AR, VR functionalities as well.
Great. So, Dr. Jha, Mr. Jha, I would want to understand from you, because you've been doing pretty decent amount of work within the vocational education. So what is an impact do you see of this digitalization or this formal way of technical education that's happening in the vocational space?
What is the impact that we see of? Can you repeat the last sentence?
This digitalization of the skilling in vocational space.
Oh, right. See, we have been doing quite a lot of, induction of technology into actually in vocational education. So one of the things early on, actually, I missed out talking about is that while it is fine to say that there could be AR and VR, but how do we also ensure as organizations that we deploy AR and VR in the education that we are doing? So, I mean, we've had very good experiences and output. We did actually, I'll just recount two of the examples which we've done firsthand. One, we had deployed this, and that was actually in Bangalore itself, coincidentally. We deployed a VR in simulating a welding, TIG welding machine, TIG welding machine for, certain workers required in the industrial sector in Bangalore. So what we found, I mean, somebody was mentioning that the consumables should be less. So what exactly does it mean? It means that your first time investment in terms of capital could be higher, but the repetitive use of that technology actually works out to be a much more cost effective. So you don't keep on using those anodes and diodes and to do those welding. So that's one part of it. The other one is also simulated environment for destructive tests. So that is what is understated in India actually. So you have these heavy vehicle drivers and you have those tests that we are doing. I mean, we are not really in a position to try out those tests actually and get those experimental results. But if you do simulation, you could do it, and this has a long-term impact. So I, for one, surely believe that this is something which we should be deploying, and in fact, there is a good business case for it to be deployed. And there are a number of organizations, including mine and even my previous organization, where I was working in Bangalore, incidentally, again, I mean, in an organization called Evernet, where we actually deployed these simulations in a number of our centers in the CSR programs that we implement. Yeah.
There's a question, there's a very interesting question that has come up from Samia. She asked that IT-enabled future skills is creating economic divide, which is getting wider. How can we pursue other interests without skill premium like in IT? So the mindset over here, what I could understand from the question is that everything being in and around the future skills. And I think, Raina ma'am, this is a question that you might want to take it up because this is more from the functional side of it, wherein it is being felt that the IT skills are creating an economic divide between the communities. And how can we pursue other interests without having skills, premium skills like an IT skill?
Yeah. So first of all, I would say, I would referate all of us, including the person who's asked this question, from the word IT. Why I am saying so? Because technology, fortunately, unfortunately, has seeped into everything in our life. Let me give you a simple example. Banking as an industry. No one would have thought 50 years back that bank will become a platform. Today, bank is a platform. Now, to create that platform of the bank, there is the need of the IT and the IT products and services, but there is a front end of the bank as well, right? So there is a population, maybe 60% working in the IT, but there is a 40% population who is actually working in that front end side. This is one part of it. So it is not about IT. We have to be aware about technology. We have to have the basic understanding of technology. Even, as Mr. Jha said rightly, even in a sector like manufacturing, this is becoming the kind of a core. So we cannot do away with that. It's like our school now, for sure. Now move from the school. When you go to the second level of skills, one of the things, the challenges which this super digitalization will pose will be human well-being, the places which require social interactions, the counseling, the coaching, and many other such skills, because obviously, we are social animals. But if we are forced to be like robots over a period of time, there will be a different set of frustration which will be coming in the communities and in the societies. I think creating functional understanding or maybe making yourself ready for those kind of roles will also become equally important. I am sure you will not have heard about the word mental well-being so many times in your lives as you heard in last 2 years. Now, the question which we need to pose, why did it happen? Because there was too much of digitalization, too much of the room and laptop. Of course, you saw a small, I would say, a taste of the things, what is going to happen in the future when everything gets technology driven. So I think first, let us understand technology is everywhere. Now, think about the subset, the next skills which you can take up. And as I told you, counseling, coaching, front office roles, customer interfaces, those will still continue to be.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, ma'am, for such a detailed answer. I'm sure that would have answered the question for the lady who had put up this particular question. So without taking much more time, and I think we are any which ways a little overshot the time now, I would really want to thank all of you, the entire set of panelists who have been available with the entire wisdom behind them and have been helping us in understanding a lot of things at the part. One thing that we will definitely be getting a lot of questions around, so we will take the liberty of extending those questions to you and requesting you to please assist us with the best possible views that can be.
Sure, we'll be more than happy.
Thank you.
Happy to do it.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Mukund sir, for taking out your time. Thank you so much, Sanjeev sir, for being available.
Thank you. Thank you.
Reena, Ritu ma'am, that was a real pleasure having you on the call, and that really gave us a lot of insights. And Rakshit sir, there will be a lot of questions that will be coming across to you. So we will any which ways be expecting more inputs from you. So thank you so much for today, sir. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Rajat. Thanks,
Thank
Abhishek. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. It was a pleasure meeting you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.